Holly eats cheese!
Wednesday day!
Yes, we grew up watching Wallace and Gromit too. Hey guys, I'm Eric.
And I'm Grace. We're the Wandering Ravens.
We're a couple of digital nomads who have been wandering around the world for over 3 years, and we make videos about travel and culture.
If either of those topics interests you, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell icon so that you can get notified every time we release a new video.
Today we're talking about the differences that we have noticed between France and England. We've been living in France for nearly 4 months now, and last year we spent 2 months living in central England. So the differences that we're presenting are based on our experiences in each of these countries.
First up, we have fashion. Both England and France have more of a sense of style than the US, in my opinion. But what we have noticed is that French people seem to be a little bit more stylish than English people. And we've heard that from other Brits too.
An example of this is that here in France, when we, go down to the bus stop or you're in the grocery store, you'll notice that most older French people, even if they're just out and about doing their grocery run, they will have their makeup on, she's got her string of pearls, hats, trousers, they're very well put together, regardless of the occasion. Question for you, when it comes to fashion, who do you think has the greater fashion sense, England or France?
Strikes, or la grève, as it is called here in France. I've never really heard British or English people talking about work strikes or strikes against the government. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Government strikes?
Government strikes, work strikes.
Things like that. I've never heard a British person talk about them having one of those before. I'm sure they do. But in France, it seems to be part of the culture here to be on strike.
Yeah.
For some reason. Since we have arrived here in November up until now, which is mid-March, we have lived through month-long strikes. I think the first one lasted 2 months, and it was like a public transportation sort of strike, so there was no metro in Paris for like 2 months.
Then there was a fireman strike, and then a garbageman strike. It was basically strike, strike, strike until and now people can't strike anymore. Question for you, when it comes to strikes, England, do you strike? How often? When? Because we never hear about it in the news. And if you're French, how do you feel about the French reputation for frequently striking? Is that something you're proud about, or is that something that you would disagree with? Friendliness on the street. When we were in England, we were staying with friends that had an adorable little Jack Russell Terrier. And so when we would take him on walks down to the cafe or the grocery store, people would constantly stop, talk to the dog, talk to us, be like, oh, little Jack Russell, they're ornery, aren't they? A little grouchy old man. And then, they were just very friendly to us and the dog. But here in France, the friends that we've been staying with, they have a large Bernese Mountain Dog, which, if we were in the States or in the UK, I feel like he would just be getting a ton of attention every time we go out. But when we take him on walks, no one even bats an eye. They don't look at him, they just walk straight past you, which I think is a really good example of how England and France are different when it comes to public interactions on the street. In England, people will smile at you if you're outside of London. In London, it's city people, but outside of London, people will smile at you, say good morning, maybe engage in a chat if you engage them. But here in France, it's very, they don't smile at all. They look straight forward and don't talk to people.
It's more cold cultured here, I think.
The way French people act is the way a lot of Americans stereotype British people as being stiff upper-lipped, serious, reserved. The British people aren't that way. The French are.
All of that said, if you do say hello or good morning to a French person when you're passing them on the street, they will usually say it back as well with a smile. Now, I have heard that that's not like typical to say good morning, like bonjour to someone when you pass them, but I still do it just to be friendly, and people do it back and they smile, they seem to like it, so
If you initiate,
people will reciprocate.
Peeing in public.
Public urination.
Unfortunately, in many places in Paris, you have to pay to pee. This is not the case in London, fortunately. The French seem to cope with this difference by just peeing everywhere.
Did I tell you that I was taking the dog on a walk the other day, and I stumbled upon a Frenchman peeing in the forest. And it was normal. He didn't care. He didn't act discreetly or embarrassed or anything. Okay, he was here I was here.
Yes.
No, wait, he was here, I was, no, wait, no, he was here. Okay,
Right.
he was in a certain place and I was in a certain place and I saw him peeing and I was walking and I was walking and I was gonna walk past him and then he like finished doing his business and then came and joined me on the trail and we looked at each other like, bonjour, and then that was it.
And we've seen this in Paris too on multiple occasions. You know, down there's someone peeing against a wall, or you know, this kid is peeing.
More than that though, you just have to like avoid the puddles of pee that you're bound to encounter. It's like, ooh, don't step in the pee, don't step in the pee. Yeah, it's really gross.
Every city has public urination, but in Paris it seems to be a significantly more.
Meal times. So meal times in England seem to pretty much match meal times in the States. So you know, you'll have breakfast at 7 or 8, lunch around noon, dinner around 5 or 6. In France, it is quite a bit different. So while they will still eat breakfast at like 7 or 8, you know, going to work, stop by the boulangerie, get a baguette or something, not a baguette, a croissant or pain au chocolat for breakfast. Dinner is much later. The French usually start eating around 7 or 8 p.m., which to me, that's just like, I go to bed around that time. Like, I don't want to eat dinner at like 7 or 8. So yeah, it's really late that they start, and they eat for a really long time. I think this is true with lunch too. They also eat lunch longer than, how long of a lunch break do you get in England? I would assume it's probably pretty similar to the States, so like 30-minute lunch break. In France, I think you get like a 1-hour lunch break. Or at least that's what my French friends tell me.
Vehicle appearance. Something we've commented on in previous videos is that in England, we don't really see any beater cars. Cars seem to be new, they're shiny, they're clean, and you don't really see anything that's old. Here in France, there are quite a few old cars and a few of what we would call beater cars in the States. I know in England, cars have to pass an MOT test every 3 years, and that's what filters out a lot of the beater cars. But I've heard that here in France, they also have an MOT test. Could you speak to this issue? Let us know what's the difference in MOT tests between each country and why there are more beater cars in France than in England.
Public transportation types. In France, they have double-decker trains. I did not see any of those in England. England has double-decker buses, whereas France has the accordion buses.
Public transportation costs. A major difference between France and England is that public transportation costs significantly less here in France than in England. For example, riding a French train for an hour will cost you about $20 US, while riding an English train for an hour will cost you anywhere between $40 and $70 US.
Ouch.
Yeah. Another difference is that if you buy a ticket the same day as your journey here in France, it'll cost the same as it was a month or 2 months before. Pricing is always the same. But in England, if you wait until the last minute to buy your ticket, the price will increase significantly.
Exponentially.
It gets very expensive. Another place that you can see this difference is in the metro cards. So in Paris, there's the Navigo Pass, which is a card that gives you access to all the buses and trains and metro and all that sort of thing. And 1 month access to all districts in Paris will set you back $84.
That's really not that bad.
Not bad, not bad for a month of public transportation. On the other hand, in London, getting an Oyster card that gives you access to all districts for a month costs $471.
Oh! Get it
I know. So, frankly, my English friends, it's great that you guys have public transportation, but why is it so bloody expensive?
At what cost? Right? Literally.
Yeah. Of all the countries we've been to, England has the most expensive public transportation. More expensive than America, and that's saying something.
Scooters, they are everywhere in Paris.
Thousands.
Contrasting that to London, where we did not see very many.
Dog.
Lovely topic.
We noticed that in England, people are very good about picking up after their dogs and throwing it away. In France, it seems that picking up after your dog is optional because there's dog poop everywhere.
Question to French viewers. I know in some cities, you know, it's actually required that you pick up after your pet, and if you don't, you will get fined or something like that. Is there any laws about picking up after your pets here in France, or is that just not a thing? Surveillance. we noticed that in England they have a lot of CCTV, whereas France doesn't really have a lot of security cameras.
We've heard that French people are a bit adverse to security cameras, and that might be why there are significantly less here than in England. If that is a topic that you know about, make sure to drop your thoughts down below and let us know why we see so many more cameras in England than here in France. Public drunkenness. In England, when you're walking around late at night, it's not uncommon to come across a number of drunk people. But here in France, we've been here for 4 months and have yet to encounter a single drunk person on the street. Greetings! In France, you give la bise.
La bise!
So, should we demonstrate?
Yeah, we should demonstrate.
So here in France, when you greet someone, it is very common to greet them with the la bise. In England, this is definitely not the case. We didn't see anyone kissing each other on the cheeks in England, didn't get kissed by anyone on the cheeks in England, so that's a difference.
There's a difference in greeting styles there. I do have a question for French viewers. If you're French, which side do you start with when you are going in for the la bise? Because this is something I have heard other French people debate among each other. So if you're French, which side do you start with?
I think you go in and touch your right cheek.
Yeah.
Because every time I've done it.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we think. That's our hunch. But we've heard other people argue about it. Also, how many times do you do la bise?
Also, in England, when you greet someone, it's not uncommon to give them a hug, like we do in the States. But here in France, we haven't really seen anyone give hugs. What they do is when they greet, they give la bise, and while they're giving la bise, they kind of...
They do like an elbow touch.
Yeah. So touch the elbow and la bise, and
yeah,
that seems to be the way greetings are.
But there's like 1,000 more nuances to la bise that you need to understand, like how your relationship with the person, their gender, your gender, all of that nonsense that we still don't know.
It's easy for girls because they just do la bise with men and women. But it's scary for a guy because while you do la bise with, all women, you do it with some guys, but not with other guys. So that is confusing. When I meet a guy, I'm like, all right.
And also, as a guy...
Are we doing it? Are we doing this? I don't know how to tell.
And then they're like,
yeah.
What? No, wait, no, they wouldn't do that. They do like the... Bread. England does sliced bread better, but France does all other bread better. But how would I know? Because I can't eat bread because I am allergic to gluten.
Yeah, I guess you're going off of my...
I'm going off of your experience here. I've smelt it. It smells really good.
So I guess I'm the bread eater in this relationship.
Yeah.
So from what I find is in England, the sliced bread that you buy in the stores is generally better. But here in France, baguette, croissant, all the type of other breads, loaves, fancy loaves of bread are better. Cheese!
Gromit! It's cheese!
Gromit eats cheese!
Wednesday Day!
Yes, we grew up watching Wallace and Gromit too. A difference in cheeses is that French cheese stinks to high heaven. It is pungent. You walk by and you're like, whew. Also, French cheese is a lot wetter, seems to be, in general, a lot wetter and softer than English cheese. In England, we saw an emphasis on harder cheeses, less wet cheeses, and also the flavor wasn't quite as stinky as it is here in France. To my palate, which is very new to cheese, English cheese is a lot better because it doesn't have that knock you out flavor, but I guess that if you're a cheese person, you might like the punch in the face cheese that they have here in France.
The feet of God.
It's the feet of God. Question for you, what kind of cheese do you prefer? Do you like a strong, stinky, wet French cheese, or do you like a hard, savory English cheese? Drop your comments down below. And now we're gonna turn the conversation over to you. If you've been to England and France, what differences did you notice? Drop those down below. We'd love to engage in a conversation about them with you. Again, we're Eric
and Grace.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button to help the YouTube algorithm spread this around.
And make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you can get more travel and culture in your life. Also hit the bell notification so that you can be notified every time we release a new video.
We'll see you guys next time.